3 of the conference focusing on the church in Asia. We begin the day with a short prayer. May I invite brothers from Dharmaram College to lead us to prayer.
Holy Spirit, sanctifying Spirit, come and anoint us all. Holy Spirit, sanctifying Spirit, give us your gifts in us. You break away my shackles of sin. You wash away my stains with your grace. You break away my shackles of sin. You wash away my stains with your grace. You break away my chains with your word. You bring your fire of power in me. Holy Spirit, sanctifying Spirit, come and anoint us all. Holy Spirit, sanctifying Spirit, give us your gifts in us.
Thank you, brothers. Now we are all set for the keynote. May I welcome Professor Vimal Thiramana, who will deliver the keynote on the theme Synodality in the Asian Church. And may I cordially welcome Professor Joris Geldorf, who will moderate the session. Joris Geldorf is Professor of Liturgical Studies and Sacramental Theology at the Faculty of Theology and Religious Studies, KU Leuven, Belgium. He is Vice Dean for Research and chairs the Liturgical Institute. His major areas of interest and expertise are liturgical theology, the Eucharist, and questions pertaining to Christian sacramentality in contemporary cultures. He has a number of books and publications to his credit. Over to you, Professor Joris Geldorf.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. I hope you had a good rest and that you are strengthened by the celebration of the Eucharist this morning and breakfast, of course. This morning we have our third keynote session, and as a speaker for us we have a Redemptorist father and a man with a lot of experience, Vimal Thiramana, among us. He teaches moral theology in Rome at the Pontifical Accademia Alfonsiana, the Pontifical Università Urbaniana, and the Pontifical Bida College, and also at the National Seminary of Our Lady of Lanka, Kandy, Sri Lanka. He has served as a member of the FABC's Office for Theological Concerns and the Sri Lankan Bishops' theological representative as the Sri Lankan Bishops' theological representative from 1996 to 2012, and also as its executive secretary from 2002 to 2012. He has edited and written a few books and published many theological articles in various international periodicals, and he will speak to us today, as already announced, about synodality in the Asian Church, FABC Insights for a Synodal Church. Dr. Thiramana, we look very much forward to what you have to share with us.
Good morning to you once again. The theme assigned to me, as is obvious from what you read there, is entitled Synodality in the Asian Church, with special reference to FABC Insights for a Synodal Church. What I wrote as the text is much longer than what I have given in the book, because it had to be concise according to Asaji. And in view of that, I had prepared a PowerPoint presentation, but again, not to be out of step with the rest of the speakers, and also for the sake of those who have different understandings. In the sense, we are not born in England, so our accents are different. So in view of that, I will read most of it, but here and there I'll jump forward or add extra things. So, synodality in the Asian Church, FABC Insights for a Synodal Church. There is this thing, I think I heard it in the plenary during the past couple of days also. I think especially yesterday, Aldegonde was referring to it, that we should make sure that the synodality be kept out of being considered. We should refrain from considering synodality as a pet idea of Pope Francis. In fact, I think if I remember, I made a mental note. Aldegonde said, the so-called Francis syndrome. Because if you associate synodality only with Pope Francis, one day, like you and me, he will also be gone. Synodality will also be gone from the church. So in view of that, I thought, when I was penning down these thoughts, that it's important to show the seeds, the insights that have been there in the church much, much before Francis became Pope. So my presentation will have that line of thought all along. Let me read. Here, our main aim is to highlight the fact that neither the synods nor the synodal way of ecclesial life is alien to the churches in Asia or to the universal church. And I hope to do this from an exclusively an Asian perspective. First, I will highlight some constituent elements of synodality that have been present in Asian socio-cultural ethos for generations, and then briefly refer to the ancient synods and synodal ways of life in the early church communities in Asia. We will draw attention to such practices which are present even now thanks to our Oriental Christian churches in Asia. This will be followed by an effort to extract certain insights from the FABC. This third point I want to highlight, when I read it, you will see again. But before that, a little comment is in place. As we know, most of us are brought up in the classical theological traditions, because that's a dominant tradition in the church today, at least in the Western church. In Euro-American theology, especially classical theology, logic functions in and through the principle of non-contradiction. Two contrary affirmations thus cannot be true simultaneously. It has to be either one or the other. Many Western theological dichotomies, such as nature, supernature, body, soul, matter, spirit, human, divine, secular, holy, world, church, etc., have their roots in this strictly rational either-or approach. However, by nature, Asians do not make such hair-splitting distinctions, traditional Asians. For them, the entire reality has to be grasped holistically, in its totality. They prefer to see nature and supernature together, body and soul together, just like in the Bible, matter and spirit together, human and divine together, etc., etc., etc. That is, they prefer an inclusive and approach, nature and supernature, body and soul, rather than an exclusive either-or approach. Accordingly, I want to keep with my reading this side, find it difficult. Accordingly, Asians by nature cherish a day-to-day logic of inclusion than exclusion, and consequently, they adopt a holistic approach to reality. A necessary corollary of this is the peculiarly Asian sense of harmony, about which I hope we will have time to discuss when we have time to interact with the audience. Pope John Paul II himself acknowledges this in his Ecclesia in Asia, when he writes that in Asia, being Asian is best discovered and affirmed not in confrontation and opposition, but in the spirit of complementarity and harmony. Number 6 of Ecclesia in Asia. This precisely is a core value of the current synodal process. Not to exclude even contrary views. It's enough to give a glance to the document for the continental stage, which is out now. There too, the idea is to include synodality in its basic essence is that. So the FABC statement at the plenary assembly in 2009 in Manila, in the Philippines, this line is of importance for our purposes here. One of the strong characteristic features, that plenary said, of Asian cultures is belonging and loyalty to one's family, clan, community, and ethnic group. Perhaps, yes, perhaps, it is this strong Asian value of being together, being in a community, being in a group, that has laid the foundation for the typically Asian communal sense within a given socio-cultural context. To begin with, the traditional Asian concept of family was not limited exclusively to the nuclear family, and at times even to an entire village. For example, the ancient Indian concept, I took the Indian example because we are having this in India, but I have a few other examples as well. Panchayat. It portrayed the collective sense in the traditional Indian way of thinking, or the sense of solidarity of all inhabitants of a given geographical area. I think those Asians who are present here will have their own examples to corroborate what I say. The institution of Panchayat, just to give a descriptive line, the institution of Panchayat represented not only the collective will, but also the collective wisdom of the entire rural community. Similarly, in Sri Lanka, my country too, you find such collective sense. Let's get into synodality in ancient Asian ecclesiastical traditions, because I feel that we Christians cannot be limited, as it has been pointed out, to just Western Latin way of thinking. Christianity from its ancient times is much wider than that. That's just part of it, although today it's a dominant line. So that's what I want to say here. In her recorded ecclesial history too, the Christian communities in Asian continent are no strangers to synods or to the synodal way of living, ecclesial existence. To begin with, the first few synods of the early church were held in what was then known as Asia Minor, Anatolia in present-day Turkey, in the westernmost part of the Asian continent, geographical continent. The better known among them, such as Nicaea, Ephesus, Chalcedon, Constantinople, etc., were all held in Western Asia. You should not forget that too. Moreover, historical records confirm the vital importance of what was known as the Synod of Isaac in Persia, that's present-day Iran, in 410, which was the beginning, as Hugh Moffat says, the beginning of a long process of gradual separation of Christianity in the East from the West. As is commonly held by the historians, the culture of synods was so active in early Christian ethos in both East and the West, gradually, though it was so, gradually it took a back seat in the Western or Latin Church with the dawning of the second millennium, particularly with the happenings of medieval Europe. As Tonipara, the historian, I think he is present somewhere here, Francis Tonipara, CMI father, a great historian on Oriental rites, points out correctly, I quote, synodal and conciliar activities in the church were very common in the first 9 centuries for the whole church, particularly before the Great Schism. And I want to also support this point by quoting from International Theological Commission's statement. It says, "Since the beginning of the second millennium, synodal procedure gradually took on different forms in the East and the West, particularly after the breakdown of communion between the Church of Constantinople and the Church of Rome in the 11th century, and when ecclesiastical territories belonging to the patriarchates of Alexandria and Jerusalem came under the political control of Islam." That's just a citation. I want to get into Oriental churches and give special reference to them here because most of them have their traditional roots here in Asia. Oriental churches of diverse ancient Christian traditions are with their roots going back to the earliest Christian communities spread in various parts of the Asian continent, such as those of the Maronites, the Chaldean, Coptic, Syrian, Armenian, and of course the St. Thomas Christians here in India, which have been consistently and uninterruptedly using synodal ways of ecclesial living, and they are still vibrant with life, though at present confined to comparatively small minority Christian communities compared to Latin Church. For example, for the St. Thomas Christians here in India, I quote Tony Parra here, "The synodal or participative nature of the Universal Church had a varied expression in the daily church administration." End of quote. Thus, the two most numerous churches here in India of St. Thomas Christians that are in full communion with Rome, the Syro-Malabar and the Syro-Malankara, have synodal ways of ecclesial existence even today. This we should not forget. It's not an ancient remnant. They are existent even today, at least certain elements of synodality. Yes, I missed the point. As the Indian church historian, again I am referring to Tony Parra, with their elevation to major archiepiscopal church status in 1993 and 2005 respectively, to sui juris churches, have a lot of administrative freedom. For example, in the election of the major archbishop, in the election of the bishops, and in liturgical matters, the synod enjoys reasonable freedom of the early church, which they had from the beginning. In this way, they seem to have in their ecclesial existence the very ecclesiology proposed by Vatican II with regard to local churches, in spite of some minor limitations here and there. Thus, with regard to the participation and communion as proposed by Vatican II and by Pope Francis now, it's nothing new. He is only trying to resurrect what Vatican II said. These churches have the traditionally inbuilt ecclesial structures that promote the involvement of all the baptized in the ecclesial affairs. I have put there, again, I am very grateful to Father Tony Parra, commenting on the revival of the traditional Syro-Malabar ecclesial concepts such as Palli Yogam, Desiya Yogam, Mahayogam, etc. He says, "The fruitful of the renewal promised by the Second Vatican Council in promoting ecclesial communion, episcopal collegiality, and synodal functioning have been to a great extent achieved by the Syro-Malabar Church." He says the same is true with regard to Syro-Malankara Church. In addition to reactivating the Concilia Ecclesiology, Lumen Gentium, the current synodal process, dear friends, is also a return, I hold this opinion very firmly, is a return to the ecclesiological spirit of the early Christian churches. In that sense, it's a resourcement. Throughout this paper, my main aim is to, although it is to present about insights of FABC and how synodality had been present in Asia, my main purpose is to show that this is not something alien, not something that fell down ever since Jorge Mario Bergoglio was elected Pope. It has been there. It has been dormant. So, we can discuss that later if you wish. According to me, it is nothing but providential that our Oriental brothers and sisters in those churches, amidst many challenges, both from within and without, in history, had painstakingly preserved the synodal way of existence and decision-making and decision-taking as part of their inherited ecclesial patrimony. Now I come straight, I don't know where, we have come there, to the insights. I would like to call, better than insights would be seeds, as we saw in the response to the questionnaire for synodality from the Superiors Generals Union. There are seeds of synodality in the religious traditions, just a religious life, consecrated life. Just like that, in the Asian FABC teaching as well as FABC structure. That's what I want to show. I have referred here to our dear friend and colleague, Raphael Luciani. What he says here, I have quoted there. We can define synodality even more precisely as an ecclesial way of proceeding, of walking together. I'm jumping out of the citation due to lack of time. If synodality basically means walking together, then the whole of humanity walk together in one pilgrim journey. If you wish, we can discuss that later. And here in the Asian context, not just the believers, not just the baptized, but also the non-believers within their multi-religious, multicultural context. We hold hands together with them and journey, go on this pilgrimage. From an exclusively Asian perspective, it is a pilgrimage of all the peoples of Asia. In fact, true to their daily lived experiences in Asia, from its very inception, FABC had been striving to walk together with all the peoples of goodwill in Asia, belonging to various cultures, religions, etc., not forgetting the teeming millions of the poor of Asia. That's why we have the triple dialogue: interreligious dialogue with religions, inculturation dialogue with cultures, and a special option for the poor with the teeming millions of our poor brothers and sisters here in Asia. In what follows, we will try to briefly highlight a few salient points in the structure of the FABC itself first, then in some of the teachings, depending on the time that is available. At least some minutes are there. Before 5 minutes, give me a ring. So, insights from the FABC structure and the way of being. I'll read it out because that way I'll be not making unnecessary comments. I can save time also. Ever since its inception in the early 1970s, FABC has followed a somewhat synodal way of life, at least, please mark here my words, at least in the early decades of her history, not now. I remember, I have been in the FABC for 16 long years. I remember at the plenary in 2004 in Daejeon in Korea. Till then, FABC assemblies were of representatives of all the rungs of the ecclesial hierarchical structure. Cardinals, bishops, priests, all the religious, baptized, all the baptized, but in different proportions. But from 2004, due to certain incidents, it's mostly restricted today to bishops and their advisors, etc. So what I want to say is that was not the structure which was there. You can check any FABC history till 2004. I have good evidence to show. What I am trying to say is this talk of ecclesial assemblies rather than episcopal assemblies today, as is present in Latin America, Raphael was talking about it, and we have been sharing a lot in other fora. It's not alien to Asia. We have had it, at least it's not alien to FABC. Although it's alien to FABC today, due to certain hiccups. The same ecclesial sense was also evident in what was known as bishops' living experiences From the beginning, various officers, there are 9 officers of FABC, particularly the Office for Human Development, Office for Interreligious Dialogue, and a few other officers have been organizing for some groups of Asian bishops to live with the people, live in experiences directly in slum areas, in difficult areas. I think Bishop Theo must have been one of the members there, because he has been a long time member, he has been actively involved in the FABC. So they have been very appreciative of that. What I want to show is the closeness, the togetherness of the Asian hierarchy at a given time to the people whom we call the non-clerical people, lay people. And they have given various comments on their experiences with great appreciation. I have given references there. Also, the groundbreaking resolution at Bandung in Indonesia in 1990 to live a new way of life, new way of being the church in Asia through ecclesial communities and basic ecclesial communities and basic human communities. These are some of the elements present in the structures of the FABC. Now I come to, hardly 3 minutes left, I come to the insights. That is the longest part of this paper, but I reduced them in point form. Some of the fundamental elements of the current synodal process, what I call seeds of this process, were already present in the FABC teaching, and I have encapsulated in point form here, but they are expanded in the real paper. Walking together. This has been a theme dear to the FABC. A new way of being the church. I still remember, and some of you who were present may also remember, and others have read it, Pope Francis at the inauguration of the synodal process in October 2021 in the Vatican, he said clearly, what we intend is not to create a new church, but to relive the church. Actually, I have given the real words in the other text. He was quoting Konga, Yves Konga. So this is a parallel to what the Asian bishops have been saying. We don't want to have another church, a parallel church. It's a question of a new way of being church. Enlarging the tent. These phrases are not found in FABC documents. Let's not be too naive. But ideas to that effect are present. I have proved that in the other text. Then harmony, a concept very dear to us in Asia. Living in harmony. It's not a theoretical concept. We live with Buddhists here in Sri Lanka. We live with Hindus here, Muslims. We live with other races. Of course we have tensions. For example, in my country, Sinhala Tamil tensions were there. They are there. But normally, in a village or in a city, there's harmonious living. It's not a theoretical thing. It's a lived fact. Lay participation, then listening, active listening, through mainly dialogue, as I mentioned earlier. I come to the conclusion. Of course, those points are much more expanded than what you have there. So the conclusion is this. From what we have been saying above, the synodal way of life is not alien to our Asian lived reality. In fact, most of the fundamental core elements of synodality are present in Asian socio-cultural realities themselves, as I tried to show at the beginning, which the FABC teachings have tapped as their main contextual sources. Moreover, the ancient Christian traditions that have been extant in the form of Oriental churches in Asia do still vibrate with such core elements of synodality. So all in all, what I want to say is, synodality is not something alien to Asia. Seeds of synodality, insights of synodality have been with us for ages. Thank you.
Dr. Thirimana, for your sharing with us your insights, and I'm sure that it will raise a lot of questions. So the floor is open for any questions or comments, and as we have become familiar, we will take 3 questions and then Dr. Thirimana can respond to them.
You,
Dr. Father Vimal, for your erudite presentation. Rather, I have two observations, maybe questions. One of the aspects that synodality should be lived, especially in the Asian context, should be based on the premise that the universal church is the communion of individual churches, especially sui juris, as you used it. But real tensions are there, and that really affects the synodality. What is your response to that? Second question or observation regarding the last part. Always we have been using the word lay participation. It has its own cliches there. If I suggest another thing, hierarchy, lay, co-responsibility, that would be more nice with regard to the synodal ambience, I think, being a layperson, because participation is something given, or sometimes it's a privilege or a right being given, rather than hierarchy, lay, co-responsibility, because co-responsibility is a contribution of the Vatican Council based on the experience of the early church. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon from University of Tübingen in Germany. Vimal, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. What I took out of it is that it's not the synodality that is alien to Asian church, but right now it's the FABC, which is maybe alien to Asian culture, right? This is something that I maybe learned of it. Maybe you can say some words to that. And also to this incident of 2004. So how did that happen? I'm really interested in this to, get it right, how we can get into the future maybe, and that something like this will not happen again. So I'm really interested in this. So thank you very much.
I'm Margaret. Thank you for the presentation, Father Vimal. You have been insisting on this point. This synodality or synodal nature was not ancient to Asian churches. But I would like to know what were the causes that this synodal nature of the Asian churches is disappearing, or what we could do so that we can restore this synodal journey in the Asian churches.
To begin with, I think I may have given wrong impressions. That's the importance of such sessions in plenary, to clarify things. I'll come to probably the way I spoke gave wrong impressions, but not with regard to the first question. Sui juris communities, and you were talking about tensions. Of course, no one can hide the fact. History is replete, full of such tensions, particularly with the Latin Church, and my Oriental colleagues here will vouch for it, how much they have had pressure from outside as well as inside, ad extra ed ad intra. But synodality, and I'm happy that I don't know I can't remember the name of Anian. Thank you for raising that question, because you gave me a platform to address an issue that has come up here again and again. You mentioned the word tension. There have been tensions. There still probably are tensions, I'm not sure. Synodality is also meant to live with tensions, live with contradictions. I don't know where I have jotted down that particular point, because living with tensions means living with diversity. Of course, where possible, we should resolve tensions. Tensions has a negative connotation, but often tensions arise due to a diversity of opinion, a diversity of way of doing things, etc., etc., diversity. But here in Asia, we have been living with diversity. Diversity is the hallmark of Asia. Take cultures, take economic levels, so much of diversity. I can't remember who presented that paper on the first or the second day. Rich and poor living together. You go to a city like Mumbai, or even here in Bangalore now. I had 9 years of all my seminary formation here in Bangalore. I remember even at that time, slums, today they have disappeared. In one area, the Redemptorist Seminary there in Bangalore East. Other area, skyscrapers. So tensions, if you call them tensions, diversities, contradictions have been there. But what I want to touch upon, and thanks for that, is living with tensions is part of synodal journey, because it means unity not in uniformity, unity in diversity. This is where, even if tensions arose with our Oriental churches and the Latin church, it was mainly because of misunderstandings or inability to accept diversity. The willingness to impose uniformity. So, talking about tensions, I found what I wanted. The document for the continental stage, number 71, says the synodal journey has brought out a number of tensions made explicit in the preceding paragraphs. We should not be afraid of them, but enlarge the space of your tent. Working document for the continental stage, number 31, also articulates a similar thing. But Asian bishops have been saying that long ago. Living with tension. I have a plethora of paragraphs here to be cited, but I don't want to. If anyone is interested, I can give them. FABC statements, teachings are full of teachings that say we have to learn to live with tensions. A lay participation, why I used that was, I'm also a child of the present church. I agree with what you say. There could be a better term for that. I was also a layperson before being ordained. So it's not in a derogatory sense. But I think we can find a better term. I appreciate what you suggested. FABC, the second question. Here I'm sorry to say, if I gave that impression, that FABC is alien to Asian culture. Not at all. Not at all. If there is one ecclesial organization, institution in the church, Asian churches, it is the FABC. It's like the conscience of Asia, Asian Christians, at least in its teachings. So it's not alien, but probably what you asked, then you asked what happened because of my statement where I said something happened in 2000. I can't mention that incident in public. A certain way of speaking to the bishops. Let me say this. It's very easy to target the bishops, and I have been, if you read my writings, I have been very critical of certain things. But also, we should know how to say that. In the 2004 Daejeon meeting, but I don't want to give details here in public, certain lay people, the way they spoke to certain bishops, I was ashamed. I was one of those who was promoting a dialogue between bishops and laity, and I myself was without answer. Because that's not the way to speak. Some bishops were so hurt, so annoyed, they said, and I was present in the Central Committee meeting that followed, they said, hereafter we will have only bishops. After all, this is an episcopal thing. I don't think they are right. But nevertheless, that's how it happened. That's the history. If you want, I can tell you privately what really happened. Then, last one was, what was the last one? What causes? I have written only causes, and I have written here what are the causes, what to do. With regard to what, sister? How it was lost. It's a long historical thing, as I mentioned in passing, mainly due to misunderstandings, mainly due to the divisions of our conscience with regard to synodality, the Oriental churches, because they got separated in 1054, mostly the Greek Orthodox and the rest of them. Although they are in communion now, some of them, sui juris churches, but still, I think it's mainly not knowing what they are. I hate to use they and we, because They and we are we, not they and we. We are we. There are many historical reasons, and also I think the Gregorian reforms, as well as the attacks against the Catholic Church in the Protestant Reformation, all these made church more and more centralized and adopted the structure that we now have in the church, which is very far from a synodal structure.
Okay, thank you. I think there is only time for one more question.
For Vimal, thank you for the nice presentation. The question I have is, the word synodality does look nice in theoretical sense, but especially churches in North India, dioceses in North India, where you find a lot of animosity between Latin Rite priests and Malankara Malabar priests, which I have experienced in a real life. We do see each other like enemies at times. And we also have seen the fiasco happening in Ernakulam diocese, where they don't follow the synodal decisions. So in this sense, how do you find synodality can be a concrete way of life? And what are the challenges, why we are not able to apply synodality in the Asian churches today? Can you please elaborate that?
I think that last part of the question has to be reformulated. Why are we not applying synodality in the Asian churches? They are present in most of the Oriental churches, as I read. They are there. But if you are asking the diverse churches in Asia, including especially the Latin church, why are they not applied? Because, as I tried to respond to Sister Margaret, as I was trying to tell her, due to various historical reasons. Even here in India, from the little I know, and I don't want to give details because I'm a Sri Lankan, I don't know the Indian reality, except the hearsay, a lot of misunderstandings because there had been not a serious constructive dialogue, I have a feeling. Synodality can help that precisely. Enlarge the space of your tent. Before we enlarge the space of our tent to the divorced and the remarried, I'm passionate about it. I'm teaching moral theology. They should be included in the space of the tent. Also LGBTQ, all this, that's fine. But before that, those churches that are in communion with us already, are they really included in the tent? So, it's mutual. I know, it's not just a Latin mistake, neither is it the Oriental mistake. So, it's here that before we talk about dialoguing with other religions, other cultures, I think we should have that dialogue within the Catholic communion of communities. So here in India, I know, I'm aware, I have my colleagues here, students here, some of them are writing dissertations on this issue. So I think it has to be nuanced, but at the same time, I would say it's mainly through dialogue, and that's happening.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Thirimana, for sharing your wisdom with us and answering so generously to the questions that we have received. We have finished right in time, so with this, I am drawing this session to a close. Thank you very much again.
May I thank Professor Joris Geldof, the moderator of this session, for keeping this session on track and facilitating productive discussions. May I also thank Professor Vimal Thirimana for sharing your valuable insights and expertise. Thank you. Let's put our hands together one more time for that.